The other day, when we were talking about the TFL dudes, someone made a crack that these guys need an IEP. And that is when the light bulb came on because something had been bothering me about their behavior. And I was like, where have I seen these symptoms before? And as I had my light bulb moment. These guys have Aspergers Syndrome. Now, this is something, the only reason I even know about Asperger's is because I had a friend whose son was diagnosed with it. And since I was, she was a really good friend of mine. And since I was around her son from infancy to about the age of 14, I got to see him grow up, and all the things that we're about to talk about were things that he was experiencing. And so I'm telling you, it was like the connection is undeniable. These guys all have some major issues. So let's talk about this, because not like this is going to solve their problem, but I think a lot of them are unaware that that's the problem that they have. They've never been diagnosed. And even though there's no cure for it, understanding what's going on with you and maybe getting some kind of counseling or therapy or whatever to help you adjust your mind and your behavior to something that's more socially acceptable to the opposite sex will enable them to finally get the relationships that they want and interact with women in more positive, fruitful ways. So this is going to be the only video I do to help men, because y'all don't want to listen to shit. But this may also help some women who have sons, because according to the CDC, this disease or disorder, whatever, let's just call it that, autism spectrum disorder, ASD, affects 1 in 68 children here in the United States, but it affects males at a rate of 5 to 1 over females. So the likelihood that your child that suffers from autism or Asperger's is going to be male are extremely high, more than 5 to 1 over girls. So that's pretty significant. So what is this autism spectrum disorder, as it's called, is a complex brain-based difference that impacts a person's communication, sensory processing, social interactions, and behavior. That's from the CDC. But I'm not really going to address the autistic part so much, because we all pretty much know what that looks like, especially the children that are heavily impacted by it. But a diagnosis of this autism spectrum disorder includes Asperger's, and they used to be diagnosed separately, autistic, something called pervasive developmental disorder, and then Asperger's, but now they're all three of them lumped together is called ASD. So as a parent, how can you recognize that your child may be suffering from Asperger's? Or if you're an adult, you may be curious about some of the things you've noticed about yourself. It tends to be referred to as the highest functioning level of autism. So the symptoms, they say, can range from mild to severe. And judging by what we've been seeing with these guys, I'd say they're kind of probably in the middle of the range. And just looking at the symptoms that they use to diagnose Asperger's, I think you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about as we go along. So I think the main thing that I found, there was a study, right, by this researcher named Laura Wing, and she did, all of her research was done on children for years, and even though they were all, somewhat different, she did find 3 very strong things that each and every one of them had. They had impaired communication skills, both verbal and nonverbal. What does that mean? And I'll go through these, one after I give you the list. So impaired communication, verbal and nonverbal, impairment in social imagination, combined with inflexible thinking and repetitious behavior. And then the third thing was impairment in social interaction, unable to make friends in their peer group, and for the older, for teens and adults, for getting dates and interacting with the opposite sex. So those are three things that these researchers found that every single child diagnosed with Asperger's had in common. So let me explain what those mean. Impaired communication, verbal and nonverbal. Part of being able to interact well in a peer group setting, in a work setting, any kind of social setting, is to be able to read signals from other people. It's you can get an idea of how they feel about what you just said, or what they heard someone else say, or what they're thinking about, perhaps their response to something that you're about to say. You can see anger, you can see boredom, you can see irritation, you can see disagreement, all those kind of things. But you have to be a person who's tuned in and able to read social clues. Asperger's people lack that ability. I had a woman, I just worked with her at this contract I did over the summer. She was it was amazing, and I diagnosed her with Asperger's, and we used to make jokes about it, but in retrospect, I think I was right. She had this very bad habit, and this is in an office. You have like your little cubby, right? Well, I don't want you coming all up in my cubby. Stay your butt on the outside and just talk. She had this very bad habit of coming all right up on you, and totally, she just couldn't see the fact that people were uncomfortable with her being in their personal space like that. She was clueless. I had to actually physically tell her. She would also say things that were inappropriate, condescending and demeaning, and then when you would tell her that that's what she had done, she would just look shocked and practically cry, because it just never occurred to her that what she said could be offensive to someone, or demeaning or degrading, or anything else that would make them feel that she was judging them in a very negative way. So reflecting on that, and reflecting on the behaviors of these guys in these videos, it's all the same. Each and every one of them has Asperger's. I'm convinced of it. Nobody can tell me different. And as we go through this video, I think you will end up agreeing with me. Okay, so the impairment in social imagination, what does that mean? That means that they can't imagine, you go into a party, right? In your mind, you're picturing, okay, I'm gonna hit the bar, and then I'm gonna check out the room and see who it is I want to talk to, and then if I do see somebody I want to talk to, I'm gonna say this, and this, and that here. And you have things in your mind that you want to talk about, or something that you heard or read about the company or the organization, or some individual that's at this event, something like that, right? They have no ability to conceptualize and make those kind of social plans. They can't do it. They just kind of go into an event, a space, a situation, and just try to deal with it from there. But they tend to be people who don't deal with stress very well. Either they're very anxious. They have a lot of fear, and they need to have things very rigid and very well constructed in order for them to feel comfortable. Otherwise, they fly into this nervous, panic. It's really odd to see. So I can see how, if a guy was going on a date, for instance, and anything went wrong, and they're not according to what he thought it was going to be, as far as what time he was going to pick her up and where they were going to go, if anything happened, he would just lose it and not know what to do. And I think that's part of the reason why they get so upset, because in their minds, right, see, they're supposed to have this girlfriend, and they're supposed to be having sex, and all this stuff is supposed to happen, check, and it's not happening, and so they're in a tailspin. They don't know how to handle it, and they don't know what to do. And since they're so anxious and fearful and easily depressed, because they don't know how to manage their emotions, they get into this space where, it's like a circular, down the drain little circle, because they can't seem to get a grasp on their emotions and clarify what it is they're feeling, and get a handle on how to handle it. So it's very interesting. And then the third thing is they have an impaired social interaction. They're unable to make friends in their peer group or to get dates. And again, that requires that you be able to interact with people. There has to be some easy back and forth exchange of information, personal information, feelings, shared activities. They aren't really able to focus on their own emotions, so they really struggle with trying to understand yours. Now, the thing that's real interesting is that, as a child, some of the symptoms aren't really that well developed. It may be difficult for people to understand that's what's going on. They may just say, oh, this kid is just a brat. He always into some shit. He talks back. He says stupid stuff. This kind of thing. It really would be difficult for them to be diagnosed unless a parent is up on what signs and symptoms to watch for. Most aren't. Because they're very high functioning. They're not autistic, like in their own world, not speaking, rocking back and forth and staring up at the ceiling and all this kind of stuff. They're not at that level. They can mix and mingle, have jobs, you do everything. But where the trick is that when it comes to them interacting with other people is a big fail. So let's see. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like something's just off. When you're interacting with them, something is just off. I can't even really put it any other way. So let's talk about this Aspergers Syndrome. What happens when you're an adult? What does that look like? Well, a lot of them are physically kind of awkward, clumsy. They have movements that aren't very smooth and athletic. They're not. They fear change. They like, sameness in their routines, as I was explaining before. They like things to be laid out and organized. They may double, triple, quadruple check something that's already been done because they have this anxiety about everything. Their thinking is very rigid. You can't give them any kind of ideas about doing things another way because it's just they just can't accept it. So the ideas that I was giving them about how to interact with women and the things that they need to change, see, it's not going to ever sink in because they just can't accept that something that they're thinking is wrong. In their mind, it's right, and everybody else is wrong. And so that's what we're running up against when we sit here and try to tell these men, no, your thinking's all fucked up and twisted around and backwards. And we're thinking they're just being stupid, which some of them may be. But in general, this is a behavioral trait of the Asperger's person. Well, I don't know what you call it, sufferer. I don't know what word to use there. But anyway, somebody who's dealing with Asperger's syndrome in their life. They also have a lack of empathy. This makes it very difficult for a man to be in a relationship with a woman when he can't empathize with what she's feeling. If she's hurting, he's just going to sit there and look at her stupid. And that's going to infuriate her, right? If he looks at some other woman and then she's having a moment of jealousy, he's going to be like, what? Why are you mad? I don't get it. And that's going to make her even more angry. So you see what I mean? It's like this kind of thing where they don't get stuff. It's like a struggle to deal with them because you got to always explain stuff 900 times and then go over it again, and then they're not going to get it, so you got to tell them again, and it just becomes too much work. And women get frustrated; they don't want to be bothered. So that is another reason why the relationships fail. And as a parent, you definitely have to have empathy for your children. They're depending on you. They don't know how to communicate well. They're depending on you to be able to interpret their cries and their facials and their facial expressions and things like that to know how to soothe them and care for them. As people with Asperger's don't have that ability. They just don't get it. They don't understand what they're seeing or hearing. They may have some kind of odd speech patterns. One thing they do is they talk hella loud. Everything is like they're shouting for everything. And it's like you got to constantly tell them, use your inside voice. And I don't know what that's about. I still haven't figured that one out because they definitely have, good hearing. It's not that their hearing is impaired. They just talk hella loud. They have problems reading nonverbal cues. As I was saying earlier, the idea that someone is bored with their conversation or they said something offensive. Now, most people are going to try to be polite and not really say anything, but that doesn't mean that they're not offended. And if you have any kind of social skills, you'll be able to tell by their change of expression, their lip curl, the way that their body movement, how they turn it away, things like that. But they don't get that. They just miss those cues altogether. Also, they tend to have some anger management problems. Now, it's not necessarily because they're trying to be violent, but what they have are extremes of emotions that they don't know how to handle. And, this is why I think it's very important for parents. And hearing this, if you see any of these signs in your child, please take your child to get diagnosed and get some help for them. Because when you know what we have, like looking at these guys, right? They're angry, they're lonely, they're pitiful, and nobody wants to be bothered with them. You as a parent can keep that from prevent that from happening to your son by taking steps early to recognize when he's suffering, that he may be suffering from this affliction, and see what you can do as far as therapy and social training and things like that. I mean, they have these programs that they put them in and teach them how to read social cues, teach them how to make small talk with people, teach them how to interact with the opposite sex, because they don't fucking get it. They just don't get it. A lot of these guys, like, you'll be out with them, right? And you sit down, right, and you want to have a conversation. Now, a conversation is supposed to go back and forth. You say A, I say B. You say C, I say D. Well, in their world, they just go from A to Z, and you don't really get to say anything. You just sit there and look at them as they go on, this tirade about some subject that interests them and that you have absolutely no interest in whatsoever. They don't get it, and they just don't see the fact that your eyes are glazed over and rolling back in your head. They just totally miss that altogether. So, they just, they don't understand. They don't seem to get it when people are reacting to their behavior. Sometimes they will just say like the oddest thing, just blurt out this stuff. Then you just be like, what did you just say? And it's kind of embarrassing. It's like, especially if they're in some kind of corporate environment and they're blurting out stupid stuff, it's embarrassing. And but most of them don't even know that they just embarrass themselves. They're just oblivious to the whole thing because they don't get social cues. Now, can you imagine dating a guy like that? Can you imagine forming a relationship with someone who doesn't understand your emotions? As a woman, that is key. And it's not like you have to be like emoting all over the place, but at least a guy, come up, he could be able to tell by your body language and the expression on your face, baby, what's wrong? These guys won't get that. You'll never get that from them because they totally lack that kind of empathy. They are oblivious to what other people feel. They only think about what they feel. And they come across as remarkably immature for their chronological age, as we have noticed by the verbal whining and temper tantrum throwing and things that we've been observing by looking at these videos and the comments that these guys in these groups, this TFL and the MGTOW make. They're remarkably immature people, and they all have problems relating to women. They've been failures with women, so now they're over there in a little cave licking their wounds and cheering each other on. And I guess that's fine if that's what you want to do. But I think there are some options, but of course they have to be willing to make a change. And so far from what I've been hearing, very few of them have been willing to. But what I'm hoping, now they've been quiet. Only a few have really spoken up, but a lot of new subscribers, and they're not all women. And what I'm thinking is they want to learn, they want to hear, but they just don't want anybody to know that that's why they're here. And that's fine. I won't bust you out. I can go and see who signed up as a member on my, who's a subscriber to my channel. And so I can see everybody. That's not a secret. But it doesn't matter. I'm not here to judge you on that respect. I'm just here to present information. You make use of it if you want to, you as parents, or you if it affects you, either one. And, ladies, so that you can recognize this too. If you, do go out with somebody and he has some of this stuff, what black folks call a touch. He got a touch of Aspergers, you can recognize what's going on. And if you really love the guy, you can work with him, accordingly. But if it's too much for you to be bothered with, then just leave it alone. But these, the needs to understand the emotions and feelings of other people and then to handle your own feelings well is a key component to creating and maintaining a successful relationship. Asperger's people don't have this ability. They will have to study and learn how to do these things. And it may be even a struggle for them, to deal with their own family, their own children or mother, parents, whatever. And another thing they do too that makes be a struggle for relationships. Even though I've heard a couple of the guys saying, longingly that they wish they had a girlfriend, it requires, you have to be able to look at her. A lot of these guys struggle looking at people in the eye. Have you noticed that? When you talk to them, they put their head down, they look all to the side, their eyes all over the room, up at the ceiling, down at the floor, their hands, everywhere except at your face. And they seem to really have a problem with that. That's real interesting too. So they avoid a lot of eye contact, and they don't really like to be touched that much. That's another trait of autistic people, unless they want to have sex, of course, then they all over you like white on rice. That's where they are with that. Now we're going to talk about the obsessive interest component. They people that have the OCD kind of behavior. They just keep doing, like washing their hands or something like that. They have this compulsion to keep doing a certain behavior over and over and over. Well, these people, the Aspergers, have the obsessive interest, and they tend to focus on, just one or two topics, and then they study them to death. They collect stuff about them to death, or they talk about them to death. In this case, what do we have? We have men who whine about being a sufferer of true forced loneliness. Now, that's their thing. Now, who would make a video every day to whine about how they're depressed and how nobody wants them? See, that's a fixated thing. That's an obsessive interest. Excuse me. They have an obsessive interest in basically in wallowing in their pain and depression and rejection. I'm not really sure why somebody would want to hurt themselves over and over like that. That really wouldn't work for me. But, I'm not Asperger's either, because I took a test. And if you want to take a test, for yourself, it's aspergerstest.net, and I will put the URL up somewhere. I don't know where, maybe at the end or something. But it's aspergerstest.net, and then they have a test there, a little online test that you can take. And I got like 5. So it's like I have no signs of Asperger's at all, which I already knew. But I thought it was very interesting, and I invite everybody who is listening to this and may be struggling with some of these issues, or has a mate or child who is suffering from some of these issues, to guide them towards that test. And it didn't take long, I don't know, a couple of minutes, and then it gives you, a reading of where you fall on the scale and how deeply you may be affected by the Asperger's syndrome. Now, these guys, they also have problems. We talked about the communication skills. The nonverbal communication skills are also very important. I kind of started touching on it and got sidetracked by the test, but these are people who, they can't understand things like sarcasm. Puns kind of escape them. Anything that's not a direct statement, they might not get it. They're confused, or they're going to misinterpret it, which will be frustrating to the one who's making the comment, because you're looking for somebody to get it, and then these people don't get it, so you got to explain it to them. And by the time you go through all that, it's like, oh, never fucking mind. I've just lost interest. So they also don't understand, like, phrases that we use, or idioms, they're called. I don't know. I can't think of any right now. Like, okay, rating cats and dogs. A lot of, they're going to take that literally. Like, really? Did you get a puppy? And it just becomes kind of a challenge to communicate with them. So as a parent, if you have a son and you want to know if you should look into what's called social coaching for him, these are some of the signs that you might want to look for. Your son acts bossy or insists on his own way a lot. Most children are a little bit more cooperative, but if you notice your child having anxiety about you trying to get them to do something different or a different way, that might be a clue. They can't seem to start or maintain a conversation with women. Now these, for teenagers and older young men, they really struggle with that. I mean, it's nothing to start a conversation with someone, but they just get tongue tied and they just like break out in a sweat. They can't breathe, hearts pounding and stuff. And it's like all this fear and anxiety is wrapped up into just saying a few words to the opposite sex. It's very interesting. They don't show empathy when others are hurt or sick. Most people want to, provide some support, get you a pillow, get you some water or juice or something. They just act like, what? Okay, you're sick. What you want me to do? Kind of attitude. They really struggle with losing or winning gracefully. Now, as I pointed out in that video on the participation trophy, that may be the source of this. The coaches and teachers got tired of having these damn Aspergers boys up in there all flipping out because they didn't get they weren't a winner on the team. So they didn't want to deal with the temper tantrum, so they just gave everybody a trophy so they could shut up. I can see why that would happen, but I still think that's a bad way to do things. These kids and young men tend to have no friends, no close friends. They may have some associates that they know, people they know, but they don't have like real friends, because to have a real friend, that requires emotional intimacy and an emotional connection with somebody that they don't have. You have to like make yourself vulnerable. They can't do it. So they don't really tend to have close friends. Just like I said, some people that they know, maybe some relatives, a cousin or something, but not really a close friend. They seem to constantly get ignored or victimized by other guys, and then women too, of course. Or they are in a position where they are constantly teasing and annoying other people so that nobody wants to be around their ass, because they just say stupid shit and do stupid shit. That might be cute when you're like 7, but by the time you're 17, 27, 30, grow up. People are looking for you to handle yourself in a different way. And, I'm not sure if they really have that capability unless they get this social coaching that I've been talking about. And then, like I said, they talk hella loud. That's just loud as hell. It seems like they're always shouting. We have some people here in my complex that do that. I mean, they just like always talking hella loud. You hear every word they say once they hit the door. Now, as I said, there's no cure for this. And in my opinion, it's very difficult to tell if somebody's really suffering from this Aspergers, whatever, or if they just being a fucking asshole, because the same signs and symptoms of assholeism are prevalent too. The lack of empathy. I mean, these are all signs of a sociopath. So, how would you know the difference? I would think it would have some kind of scale, because one thing I think about the Asperger's people is they don't really do what they do with any malicious intent. They're just odd. They're just weird as fuck. And you just don't really feel like you can really connect to them too well. The sociopath will pretend to be something that they're not, with the intention of manipulating you into giving to them. So therein lies the difference. Even though a lot of these behaviors, like I said, are similar as far as how they will play out in a relationship and how they will play out in the interactions with you, the goal and the end game is extreme. It's totally different. So what do you do if you have this Asperger's person and they have low self-esteem? Most of them will, because they've been bullied a lot as kids, and they didn't, they'd feel like they didn't fit in. They were like that, the outcasts of groups and clubs and things like that, because they were just weird. I mean, the other, kids didn't really want to play with them. And then as, young adults, they didn't get picked for teams and things unless one of their obsessive interests was something that could get them on some kind of club or some kind of team, like state chess club. That might be a lot of the Asperger's people and things like that. Band. Marching band or the school band or whatever it is, because they have this obsessive interest in their instrument. So it can be, shown in a positive light, but for most of them, I think they end up being social outcasts their whole time through high school, their whole time through college. They just don't fit in. They're kind of the lone, kid over there that everybody just rolls their eyes at. because they just don't know how to talk to people. And even if folks try to, quote, be nice to them, they're soon rolling their eyes. You know how people just kind of make those bug eyes over the person, behind the person's back? They make the bug eyes and look kind of like, what the hell is this? And then they pretty much, kind of start trying to avoid that person because it's too much. But in this self-esteem issue, you have a young person who grows up to become a man who just doesn't really believe in himself. His vision of himself is very low, and he doesn't feel like he can ever be successful. He doesn't feel like whatever goals it is he has for his life, as far as love and happiness and a family and a girlfriend and all of that, is just out of reach because he doesn't know how to handle himself to make those things happen. So when one frustration after another keeps coming about, he's going to keep on getting the idea, well, I'm no good, I can't do anything right, I'm all fucked up, nobody likes me. They go into the Eeyore mode, and which of course just makes the situation worse. So if you have a person in your life, your child, your son, that has low self-esteem, you will see that they really struggle with wanting to try new things. Why? Even though those things carry with them the chance of success, they're more afraid of the risk of failure than they are of achieving the goal. See, I'm just the opposite. I'm going to go all in just in case I win the pot. And then if I lose, we just like, oh, well, whatever. But they're the opposite. They're very, in a panic about losing whatever, money, time, their feelings, their ego, face, whatever. And so they don't want to do anything differently to make a change. They would rather stay with the familiar, even if that familiar is negative, like, saying I'm stupid, I'll never learn how to do this. What's the point? Nobody cares about me anyway. I'm just a big zero. All of that. They just have a really hard time with frustration, and they're very, very critical of themselves. So if they fail it, if they try something and then they're not successful at it, the chances of them trying it again are pretty low. And that's why we see all these guys, they may have had one date when they was in high school, and now here it is 20 years later, they still haven't had another one, because they're afraid of being rejected again. So this is a very, very interesting, what's the word I'm trying to look for? I'm kind of tired, it's late. Well, anyway, this is just my guess. This is all conjecture. I'm putting it together from clues of things that I've heard and things that I've observed in certain behaviors. And like I said, I'm comparing it to my friend's son, who was definitely diagnosed with Asperger's. And I was around that little boy from the day he came out until he was 14 years old. And so I got to see a lot of his behaviors, and I'm telling you, it's dead on. These boys here online, these young men, have the exact same behaviors and attitudes, exactly the same. So I am confident in my belief that the majority of them are suffering from some level of Asperger's, and I strongly suggest you see a therapist, some OT or somebody, or talk to your doctor about looking for a class. Usually they're run by medical centers and the psych department, and they can do what's called social coaching and teach you how to interact with the opposite sex so that you can have a healthy relationship someday, and that'll make you very happy, and you probably make some woman happy, and both of y'all can be happy, and then both of y'all beat the fuck up out of my hair. That would be so wonderful. Anyway, my name is Deborah Cooper. This has been a discussion on Asperger's and the TFL MGTOW crowd. I hope all y'all are learn something from this, because it's going to be the last time I talk about you. I'm moving on to something else. I'm tired of talking about you. But I do reserve the right to do it again if I so choose to. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys soon. Remember to like and subscribe. We'll be back with another video in a day or two. Bye-bye.